All right. So let's talk about a bit about the console wars. With Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, so I think the console wars are pretty interesting because we've got a pretty good sort of range or
Yeah,
variety.
that's the thing. Like, certain consoles do certain things right, and then certain other ones do things wrong. Like, for example, Nintendo Switch has, or just Nintendo in general, has so many great games. Like so many great exclusives, but it has a garbage controller and a garbage console. Well, newest
Yeah,
newest console, like the Wii was pretty good. Well, very good for its time actually. But like the Nintendo Switch runs really badly, and the controller itself sucks. Like, why have B at the bottom and A to the
yeah.
right? I just don't get that. But yeah, what's your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Interesting, like if you think about it, the Nintendo Switch is it's a lot older than we think because
Yeah,
it's
especially
all the way from back in 2017, which is like surprisingly long ago
yeah,
considering a
yeah,
lot of things.
exactly, and also but that's the thing. But it should be able to optimize because like Nintendo has been a company since like the 1890s or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there are so many devices that are like stuff like the Steam Deck. There's so many ways to just make the device run better, except they don't because they just haven't updated it or
exactly.
just made it better.
That's the thing. And then like the Xbox is completely the opposite. It runs
Yeah,
really well. It runs super well. The controllers are great. I personally really like the controllers. My second favorite, right behind PlayStation.
yeah,
It runs really well. Just the only problem is it has a terrible like catalog of games that are like exclusive. You know?
yeah, and that's the thing. I've always seen Nintendo as the sort of outlier because while as Xbox and PlayStation have been pretty similar in some ways, and um, yeah, they've been pretty similar, but Nintendo always seems to be the sort of outlier in that they always have specific exclusive games that are exclusive to their consoles, and on top of that, they always seem to be either ahead of the other competition or they either seem to be ahead of them or behind them in a specific way or another. Like with during the days of the Nintendo GameCube, they were pretty behind both PlayStation and Xbox. But with the Nintendo Wii, suddenly they gained an advantage over the Xbox and the PlayStation 3, except it was in a much different way in that they had this, specific type of controller that hasn't been seen before, and
Exactly.
that's sort of what gave it its, popularity amongst sort of wider range of audiences,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they've always been different in a way, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Um, Something about PlayStation though. Personally,
Yeah.
okay, PlayStation is my favorite out of the three.
Mhm.
Yes, Sony is a shitty company, but
Yes, I completely agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they're all kind of a shitty company, right? Like
Yeah, they're
Nintendo,
all crappy companies.
yeah, they're all. I don't need to get into depth about that, but if you want to know more about that, you could just look it up. It's sort of
Yeah.
basic
Mhm.
information at this point. But anyways, so about what I was saying about PlayStation. So first of all, this is really just a preference, but I love how the controller feels. I really like the controller.
Even
Uh,
just looking at the PlayStation controller, it just
yeah,
looks like it would feel really good,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Even for me, yeah.
So the PlayStation, they come out with a new one every 6 to 7 years,
Mhm.
and when they come out, they're way ahead of their time. And by the time that it's coming up on that 5 6 year mark, it's becoming like the same time. It's like not ahead of its
Yeah,
time anymore, but it's the same time. It's not behind, and then they come out with a new console which is ahead of its time. And that's what I love about it. Like, even if you go back, I have a PS3. I go back and play on my PS3, and I'm like, this is awesome, right? It's like it's got some charm to it. Doesn't look as good as the consoles nowadays, but it's got some like it's just really well made. You could tell that in 2007, or I think that's when it came out. That would make sense, yeah, since
Yeah,
the
in
PS4 came
terms
out in
of
2014. But
yeah, in terms of performance and graphics, I think that PlayStation really nails it in
yeah,
the sense that, yeah, as you described, they're essentially so ahead of their time that by the time it's a time for them to release their next generation of consoles, their is still on par with the competition or the
exactly.
rest of the market.
Exactly. That's the thing. And they also have some great exclusives. Like
Right.
the top of my head is Ratchet and Clank, but then again, I love
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank, and that's sort of biased.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's personal. Yeah.
but the thing with PlayStation is, I feel like the flaws that like if PlayStation, not PlayStation, sorry, if Xbox and Nintendo had a fusion dance, it would be PlayStation.
Right.
Like,
They're kind of, in the middle in a
it's just
sense.
just what okay, people might completely disagree with me on this, but I think that um, PlayStation does everything perfectly. The only reason why I would recommend the Switch or the Xbox, or not the Xbox, I would not recommend the Xbox actually, but the only reason why I'd recommend, actually, okay, the only reason I'd recommend the Xbox is because Game Pass. So as long as you're
Right?
paying $20 a month, then it's worth it. But for the Switch, I would only recommend it to you if you're a casual gamer and you just want to play some exclusives. Oh, the other reason though is the exclusives.
Right.
it like
The exclusives,
but
yeah.
I but here's the thing, if you're playing it for the exclusives, you should have other consoles too, right?
Yeah.
That's the
On
thing.
top of that, yeah, and on top of that, I think that's something that Nintendo has always done well is sort of being very accessible to the more casual or
Exactly.
family-friendly sort
I
of type
completely
of.
agree. A lot of the games are super easy.
Yeah, and if you look at stuff like, for example, the Nintendo Wii, it wasn't necessarily advertised to hardcore gamers, or hardcore gamers or serious gamers, which I think
Yeah.
would be more suited towards Xbox and PlayStation.
But the thing with the
Rather,
Wii,
yeah,
yeah, but the thing with the Wii is that it also could be charmful towards people who are a bit more less casual. Like
right,
for example, in Wii Sports, Matt. I don't think I have to say anymore. That black
yeah,
dude that
correct.
in Wii Sports. Anyways, point
Yeah,
is,
the
yeah,
guy, yeah,
continue. Go ahead. Yes.
yeah, I definitely, yeah, but in general, I've always seen Nintendo as being more able to sort of grab a sort of wider, more variety of
Yeah.
audiences.
Yeah.
Like even with the Nintendo Switch, I mean the Wii U was a complete flop, right?
Yeah.
But the Nintendo Switch, for example, because of the way it managed to make things very simple by being portable, but also being able to very easily and simply connect to TV, the way it just and the way the controllers are, albeit the controllers do feel very bad, but the way they can just easily snap onto the
Yeah.
console and
That's the
then
one thing I like about Nintendo Switch's
yeah,
controllers. It's the fact that they can do that, and I think that's super cool.
it's really simplified. It's designed for the casual community, to be honest,
Yeah,
and they have nailed it in that aspect.
I agree with that. And then Xbox kind of just has a nice controller and a really like insanely good deal on like Game Pass or whatever.
Right, right. So all of them do have their own sort of advantages,
Yeah,
right? I
that's the
think
thing. The thing with PlayStation is that it's got everything that's good. The only thing is that it's expensive.
it
That's the
is
one. That's
expensive,
the one
right?
thing that I would see as a reason for someone not to. And
I mean,
yeah,
there's a reason why all those Starman videos, it's always I gave away a PS5 or
yeah,
something like
it's
that.
because it's the
Like
most expensive one.
it's
Yeah,
the most expensive thing, especially back during like the GPU shortage days. Like man,
and
that
then
that stuff was, yeah.
Yeah, so then consoles are just a fixed thing. But then if you go into PCs, it's really funny because the advantages and the disadvantages really depend on what your budget is. Because, like,
Right.
let's say you buy a PC for $500, then you'll have more disadvantages, you know? But then you buy it for, like, I don't
Yeah.
know, $3,000, then you'll have way less disadvantages. So it's not about the PC itself, it's just about how much you paid for it.
Right. And that's the thing. I feel like the connecting to PCs, I think that the console I feel like the community of console players, especially with Xbox and PlayStation, is beginning to shrink a little bit. I don't think that it's on a significant level or anything, but as PCs are becoming more and more available to a lot of people, I feel like the sort of specific part of the audience that specifically play consoles but are also not casual enough to use the Nintendo Switch, but would rather go with an Xbox or PlayStation. I feel like that sort of middle ground is beginning to shrink a little bit
Yeah.
just because of the changes in the environment and the way PCs are becoming more accessible, and yeah, it's just some changes that are occurring, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, that's valid. All right,
I
well,
think,
oh, what?
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I do want to know what your perspective is on this because I'm not as much of a console gamer as I am a PC gamer. So
Yeah.
yeah. So if you know a little bit more on this, on the shift of popularity of
Yeah.
consoles, yeah.
Okay, so I'm not a console gamer either, but I do
Right.
know a lot about them since I
Yeah.
have been exposed to a lot of different PlayStations, uh,
Right.
a Nintendo Switch, and an Xbox. Nintendo Switch
Right.
the least, but I have experienced all three of the main consoles.
That's a very wide variety.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I know what it's like with all of them. So honestly, so PlayStation, I love the portability of it.
hmm
Xbox, it runs really well, and the wide catalog of games that aren't exclusive, but there is a wide catalog of them if you have Game Pass. And for PlayStation, everything.
Right.
But I'll just decide. I just really like PlayStation, and I think, yeah, what you were saying, I don't really know about the history of them, of the consoles and all that, as much
hmm
more than you, but that's pretty much
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. It seems pretty interesting, but one thing I do feel that has stayed true is that I think especially nowadays it really feels more like Xbox versus PlayStation specifically, and Nintendo's just kind of there in the background doing their own thing. That's how I've seen it for a while, and I think that's kind of how it rolls, which is pretty interesting.
yeah,
But
I
yeah,
agree with that to some extent. I think that it's never like a three-way battle. It's always one
yeah,
of them that's kind of going out there. It's always like
right,
PlayStation versus Xbox, and then Nintendo Switch is kind of going away. But then Xbox does something shitty, or Nintendo Switch does something good, and then it sort of swaps, and then Xbox is out of the spotlight, and then sort of switches
yeah.
again. But yeah, I guess it
There was a
depends.
there was like the huge shift back in 2006 to 2009 when Nintendo Wii came out, and then both Xbox and PlayStation, I think, but especially Xbox, they tried to essentially rip off the Wii controller, and Xbox made their Kinect or whatever, and that flopped
Yeah,
so terribly. Yeah. There's always a shift in terms of, who's dominant. And
yeah,
currently, I think that PlayStation is a little bit more dominant at the moment, from
yeah.
what I can tell. But yeah, it's always interesting.
PlayStation
Yeah.
also has a variety. Like
Yeah, right.
PlayStation has a variety. Like they did make the PSN,
hmm
and that was basically the Nintendo Switch, but PlayStation. Before
Right.
PlayStation, I mean, sorry, before Nintendo Switch was a thing. I think the PSN. Yeah, PSN was like PS3, PS2 era sort of. But yeah, so unless you
The
have,
place,
yeah,
yeah, the PlayStation, from what I can observe, the PlayStation definitely has a much wider variety of
yeah.
just a larger catalog of games. While
I think
as especially with Nintendo Switch, it's very difficult to find like
that's the
specific
thing.
games
Yeah,
you have.
Nintendo Switch. That's the sorry, not Nintendo Switch, but PlayStation has a bit of everything as long as you're willing to
Right,
pay enough for it.
right.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's all you have to say, if there's anything else you have to say, then
I think that kind of collects my thoughts actually.
collects your
So
thoughts. Okay, great.
yeah,
So, yeah, thank you for joining me here. This was cool. So yeah,
yeah.
see ya.